She smiled as she opened the letter. He was always good with words, always thoughtful. But something was off. Wrong name, wrong memory, wrong woman. Within a week, her entire life tilted sideways. The stories didn't match. Names surfaced and a pattern emerged, and the illusion started to crack. It began with a love note, but by the time it ended, he was front page news, a walking scandal, and somehow a San Francisco legend. San Francisco in 1944 was a city in flux. World War II was still raging. The world was still very much on edge, but the streetcars still ran like clockwork, climbing hills, dodging fog, and hauling a city forward into whatever came next. After years of wartime struggle, people felt unsettled, so they clung to routines, to uniforms, to the quiet comfort of things appearing exactly as they should be. That's where he came in. Francis Van Wee didn't stand out. He was part of the routine, another man in uniform helping the city move like it always had. At 58, he was short, bald, barrel-shaped, and like the streetcars he worked on, he blended right into the rhythm of the city. But he was kind, polite, extremely charming and helpful, especially to women. The kind of man who might offer you his seat, hold the door, or ask how your mother's been. Which is exactly why no one saw it coming. On Christmas Day 1944, Francis Van Wee had dinner with his new bride, Mary Josephine, whom he married on April 8th of the same year. With a pat on the head, a kiss on the cheek, and an armful of gifts, he left the house that evening and went to have a second dinner with his other wife, Evelyn, whom he had just married 2 weeks before. His plan might have continued to work if he hadn't followed up with thank you notes. Francis was always a thoughtful man in that regard. He sent each woman a handwritten card and then mistakenly swapped the envelopes. Mary Josephine opened a note that referenced a dinner she hadn't cooked. Evelyn got a thank you for a chicken she never served. And just like that, his neatly layered life started peeling apart. The two women compared stories. They realized they were both married to the same man at the same time. The women marched straight to the police with bigamy complaints. And that was only the beginning. The scandal hit the local papers in January 1945, and that's when a third wife stepped forward, Myrtle. She had married him back on September 24th, 1943. Now police had 3 active marriages, all in less than 15 months, all with overlapping timelines. It was a sensational story, but as the reporters and authorities started digging, the numbers got messy. By late January 1945, Francis Van Wee was under arrest and charged with bigamy. The newspapers couldn't get enough. Every day brought a new headline, a new quote, and a new woman stepping forward. Inside the courtroom, Van Wee didn't deny the accusations, but he didn't confess to them either. He just smiled and told the press he was misunderstood. Investigators began piecing together a timeline. Not just 3 wives, at least 12, maybe more. Some were legal, some weren't. A few left no trace at all. The marriages stretched back over 30 years and across the country. Francis didn't bother with divorces. He just moved on. Sometimes mere days after the marriage was official, and married someone new. No one knew exactly how many women he had married. Even Van Wee wasn't sure. When a reporter asked for the final count, he replied, "I'll have to check with my lawyer." Francis Van Wee wasn't dragged into the spotlight. He waltzed into it, smiling, waving to reporters, handing out quotes like wedding favors. He charmed photographers, gave radio interviews, said he just wanted to settle down with the right one after at least a dozen false starts. And the public ate it up. Newspapers dubbed him a Romeo on rails, but it was Stanton Delaplane, a legendary reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle, who gave him the name that stuck, the ding-dong daddy of the D-line. The nickname came from the 1930 novelty song, popularized by Louis Armstrong. The public seemed more amused than outraged. But behind the headlines, The women he deceived weren't laughing. All of them were humiliated. A few publicly described him as emotionally abusive and completely unconcerned with the damage he caused. But the public narrative had already tilted. Francis wasn't being treated like a predator, he was treated like a punchline. A quirky man with a broken moral compass. And that made him marketable. For all the chaos Francis Van Wee caused, the punishment was surprisingly mild. He was convicted of bigamy, a felony under California law, and spent 2 years in state prison before being paroled in 1947, under the condition that he not marry again for at least 5 years. But old habits are hard to break. In September 1949, Van Wee re-emerged, this time asking a judge for permission to marry again. The judge was stunned. He confirmed Van Wee had legally cleared his previous marriages, then demanded to speak to the new bride. Her name was Mary, and despite warnings, the judge reluctantly lifted the ban. The couple married right there in the judge's chambers. "How many weddings does this make?" someone asked. Van Wee just smiled and said, "To be honest, I don't rightly know. I think this is the 14th or maybe the 20th. In keeping with his tradition, Van Wee's marriage to Mary didn't last long, ending in February 1950. He is believed to have married 4 more times and faced additional accusations of bigamy, but like before, the consequences were mild. He even started performing as himself at local nightclubs. He'd get up on stage in a conductor's uniform and joke about marriage. He didn't just survive the scandal, he monetized it. He died in 1963 with his 18th and final wife, Minnie, reportedly by his side. We've walked the city avenues where his streetcar used to run. For a city so full of characters, Francis Van Wee was in a class of his own. An ordinary man, stockpiling wedding vows he never intended to keep. He didn't con women for cash, he conned them for love, which is in many ways worse. He kept marrying women and walking away, like it was a hobby he couldn't quit. And San Francisco forgave him by turning him into a celebrity rather than a pariah. But behind the winks and smiles, behind the absurdity and every I do he didn't mean, was a real person who did. And that sad fact may be the real lasting legacy of the Ding Dong Daddy.